This is how one dinner destroyed an 8-year marriage in less than 60 seconds. Hi everyone, I'm Emma, and welcome back to Mrs. Emma, where I bring you real stories about love, loss, and the consequences of our choices. Today's story is about a woman named Nora, who had everything a person could want in a relationship: loyalty, stability, and genuine love. But she convinced herself she needed more. And what happened next? Well, let me tell you, it's a cautionary tale that will make you think twice about taking the people who love you for granted. Before we dive in, if you enjoy these emotional, real-life stories, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to Mrs. Emma so you never miss another story. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this one ends. Now let's begin. Nora was 34 years old when her world came crashing down. And the worst part? She was the one holding the sledgehammer. For 8 years, she'd been with Miles, 5 of those years as his wife. Miles was everything you'd want in a partner. He was reliable, hardworking, and thoughtful in ways most people only dream about. He remembered birthdays, anniversaries, the little things that make someone feel seen. He wasn't the most thrilling person on earth, Nora would admit, but he was hers. He was solid. He was safe. But somewhere along the way, Nora started wondering if safe was enough. Enter Theo. Theo was someone from Nora's past, someone she'd known before Miles even came into the picture. There had always been this unspoken tension between them, this electric energy that never quite faded. He was the path she didn't take, the question mark that lingered in the back of her mind during quiet moments. What if she'd chosen differently? What if there was still something there? About a year before everything fell apart, Theo moved back to their town. And ironically, it was Miles who suggested they all hang out together. Miles, being the secure, trusting husband he was, thought it would be nice for Nora to reconnect with an old friend. If only he knew what seeds he was planting. They started spending time together as a group. Game nights, backyard barbecues, nothing that seemed dangerous on the surface. But Nora felt it. Those little moments that made her heart race. The way Theo would reference their shared past with a knowing smile. How he'd stand just a bit too close when they were alone in the kitchen. The lingering eye contact when Miles wasn't looking. Nothing physical happened. Nora wants everyone to know that. She wasn't that kind of person. She had boundaries. She had morals. But emotionally? That's where the lines started to blur. She found herself thinking about Theo constantly, comparing him to Miles. Miles was steady but predictable. Theo was exciting, unpredictable, alive. She'd daydream about what it would be like to have both of them in her life. The security of Miles, the thrill of Theo. And then came the behaviors she couldn't quite explain to herself. She started keeping her phone closer, face down on the table. She added extra passwords. When Miles walked into a room, she'd quickly close messaging apps, even though, as she told herself, there was nothing inappropriate happening. Just friendly conversations, inside jokes, late-night texts that were completely innocent. Mostly innocent. Miles would understand, she reasoned. He was rational, mature, open-minded. Late one night, after too many drinks and too much time scrolling through articles about modern relationships, Nora stumbled upon something that felt like a revelation. Polyamory, open relationships, ethical non-monogamy. People actually lived this way. It had names, communities, frameworks. And suddenly, in her wine-soaked mind, everything clicked into place. Why should she have to choose? Why couldn't she have the stability of Miles and the excitement of Theo? Other people were doing it. It was progressive, modern, evolved. Miles would be her primary partner, of course, her husband, her foundation, her home base, and Theo would just be supplementary, an addition, a bonus feature to enhance their relationship, not replace it. She convinced herself this made perfect sense. Miles was reasonable. He'd see the logic. They'd all be adults about it. She'd even heard about a friend of a friend who had a similar arrangement and seemed perfectly happy based on their social media posts. It wasn't asking for much, really. Just a tiny expansion of their definition of commitment. A little flexibility in those vows they'd made. So Nora hatched a plan. She chose a Friday night. She wore the black dress Miles loved. She cooked his favorite meal, lasagna from scratch. She lit candles, used their nice dishes, opened an expensive bottle of wine. She even put on makeup, which she rarely did for a quiet night at home. Miles noticed immediately when he got home from work. "What's the occasion?" he asked, that tired but genuine smile on his face. "Does there need to be an occasion to do something nice for my husband?" Nora replied, playing it cool. Throughout dinner, she let him talk about his day, nodding along while her heart pounded. She was mentally rehearsing her pitch, refining the words, perfecting her tone. She'd practiced in the mirror that morning, not too eager, not too serious, just curious and open-minded. Finally, mid-conversation about some client issue at his work, Nora interrupted. "Honey," she said, reaching across the table for his hand, "I've been thinking about us lately." Miles put down his fork, his expression shifting. "That sounds serious." "Not serious," she said quickly. I've been thinking about how to keep things exciting between us. After 8 years together." Poor Miles probably thought she was going to suggest a vacation. Maybe some new adventure in the bedroom. He had no idea what was coming. "I've been reading about how some couples open things up a bit," Nora continued, squeezing his hand. "Not like seeing other people separately, but together, as a unit." Miles set his fork down completely now. "What exactly are you suggesting, Nora?" And that's when she just said it. No more build-up. No more careful phrasing. "What would you think about inviting someone else into our relationship? Like, romantically?" The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. Miles just stared at her, his expression completely unreadable. "You want us to have a threesome?" he finally asked, his voice eerily calm. "No. Well, maybe eventually, but that's not the main point," Nora rushed to explain. "I mean an actual relationship. The three of us together." Miles took a long drink of water. His movements were slow, deliberate. "Do you have someone specific in mind, or is this hypothetical?" Nora's heart was racing now, but she'd come this far. "Actually, yes. I was thinking, maybe Theo." The way Miles went completely still told her everything. But she kept talking anyway, words tumbling out faster as she watched his expression darken. "He already knows both of us. We all get along so well. I just think it could be really special, We could... Are you sleeping with him?" Miles cut her off, his voice deadly quiet. "What? No. God, no. I would never cheat on you." And technically, that was true. They hadn't slept together, just texted, flirted, fantasized. "But you want to," Miles said. It wasn't a question. "It's not about wanting to sleep with someone else," Nora lied. "It's about expanding our love, trying something new together." Miles just looked at her. Really looked at her, like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. Then he said he needed time to think, and he went to bed early. Nora counted that as a win. At least he hadn't immediately said no. At least he was considering it. She had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, Nora tried to act normal. She snuggled up to Miles, kissed him, pretended like they'd just had a slightly awkward conversation about redecorating the living room. But Miles pulled away. "How long have you had feelings for Theo?" he asked directly. Nora should have denied it completely. Instead, she kissed him again and whispered, "It doesn't change how I feel about you." Which wasn't an answer at all. That day, Miles didn't come home from work. Nora tried calling, straight to voicemail. She texted, no response. By midnight, she was panicking, calling his friends, messaging his coworkers, even calling his workplace. Nobody had seen him. She almost called the police, but something stopped her. Deep down, she knew exactly why he wasn't there. He wasn't missing. He was avoiding her. Avoiding the woman who'd just asked to bring another man into their marriage. At 3 a.m, her phone finally buzzed. A single text. "Need space? Safe? Don't call." That was it. 8 years together, reduced to 5 words. 3 days went by with no word from Miles. Nora called out sick from work so many times they stopped asking when she'd return. She spent those days in the same pajamas, pacing their house, their suddenly empty, silent house, trying to understand what had gone so wrong. It wasn't fair, she thought. She hadn't actually done anything wrong. Having feelings wasn't cheating. Being honest about those feelings should count for something, right? She'd been trying to do the ethical thing by bringing it up instead of sneaking around behind his back. On day 3, she heard Miles's key in the lock. He looked terrible. Unshaven, red-eyed, still wearing the same work clothes from 3 days earlier. He'd been driving, he said. Thinking. Staying at a rest stop outside of town. You can't just disappear for days because of one conversation, Nora said, as if she had the right to be angry. One conversation? Miles laughed, but there was no humor in it. Nora, you asked if your friend could join our marriage. After I've watched you two flirt for months, after you started hiding your phone and changing your passwords, after you started finding every excuse to mention his name. Had she been that obvious? Nothing physical happened, Nora insisted. But you wanted it to, Miles said. Don't lie to me, Nora. Not now. She couldn't meet his eyes. It's complicated. Actually, it's not, Miles said, standing up. I spent 3 days thinking about this, and it's very simple. You have feelings for Theo. You want permission to act on them without losing me. You want me to say it's okay so you don't have to feel guilty. Put that way, it sounded terrible. I'm going to ask you one more time, Miles said, and I need the truth. Do you love him? The question hung in the air between them. Nora could lie. She should lie. Instead, she whispered, I love you both. Miles nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something he already knew. Then he walked to their bedroom. She heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding. When he came back, he had a duffel bag. What are you doing? Nora's voice sounded strange, distant. I'm going to stay with my brother in Florida for a while. I need to figure out what I want. Don't leave, Nora said, finally understanding what was happening. We can talk about this. We can forget the whole thing. Miles looked at her with such profound sadness that it almost broke her. That's the problem, Nora. We can't forget it. You can't unfeel what you feel for him. And I can't unhear what you said. As he turned to leave, desperation took over. Remember what we promised before we got married? Nora said. No cheating, no divorce. Those were our only rules. Miles paused at the door. Funny how you remember the second rule but forgot the first. I didn't cheat, Nora said. Didn't you? Miles asked quietly, and then he closed the door behind him. 2 weeks passed with no word from Miles except a brief text confirming he'd arrived in Florida safely. Nora stopped going to work. Most days, she just wandered around their house, replaying everything in her mind, trying to figure out where it had all gone wrong. It wasn't fair. She hadn't actually done anything wrong. Having feelings wasn't cheating. Being honest about those feelings should count for something, shouldn't it? She tried explaining this to her sister during one of her check-in calls. Nora, her sister said gently, how would you feel if Miles asked to bring some woman into your marriage? That's completely different, Nora snapped. How? She couldn't quite explain why, but it just was. She wasn't suggesting replacing Miles. She just wanted more. Was that so terrible? After 3 weeks of silence, Nora finally broke down and texted Theo. Just casual. Hey, been dealing with some personal stuff. Could use a friend. His response shocked her. Heard you and Miles are having issues. Probably best if we don't hang out right now. The rejection stung worse than Miles leaving. Theo, the whole reason for this disaster, was backing away too. She scrolled through Miles's Facebook for clues. He hadn't posted anything since before everything happened. But in his recent photos, their mutual friends had commented with supportive messages. Hang in there. We love you. Call me if you need anything. No one was sending her those messages. The walls were closing in. Everyone knew. Everyone was judging her. And worst of all, Theo, the whole reason for this mess, had basically told her to leave him alone. 1 month after leaving, Miles texted that he was coming to pick up more of his things. Nora saw this as her chance. She spent the entire day cleaning, cooking his favorite meal again, putting on makeup for the first time in weeks. If he could just see her, remember what they had together, surely he'd reconsider. The Miles who walked through the door was different. He looked healthier, rested. He'd gotten a haircut, lost some weight. Florida apparently agreed with him. You look good, Nora said, trying to sound casual. Thanks, he replied, not quite meeting her eyes. I can't stay long. I made dinner, she said. I thought we could talk. He hesitated but agreed to stay for the meal. They sat at the dining table like strangers. Nora poured wine he didn't touch and served food he barely ate. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Nora began her carefully rehearsed speech. What I suggested was a mistake. I was confused, but I'm not anymore. I want our marriage. Just us. Miles looked at her for a long moment. And Theo? Ancient history, Nora lied. I haven't even spoken to him. That part was technically true. He hadn't returned her calls. Interesting, Miles said. Because he called me last week. Nora's stomach dropped. What? He wanted to apologize, Miles continued. Said you'd been texting him constantly since I left. Said you told him I was completely on board with the three of us being together, but you needed him to convince me directly. Nora's face burned. That's not... I didn't... He showed me the texts, Nora. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the kitchen clock ticking. I was desperate, Nora finally whispered. I was trying anything to fix this. By lying to both of us, Miles said. He pushed his plate away. I came here today with divorce papers. I was going to ask you to look them over, give you time to get a lawyer. Tears sprang to Nora's eyes. Miles, no. But now I'm not even sure we need to drag this out, he continued, standing up. I'll have them sent to you. I think it's better if we don't see each other again. He went to the bedroom and efficiently packed another suitcase. Nora followed, pleading. What about our rules? No divorce, remember? We promised. Miles zipped the suitcase closed. You also promised forsaking all others, if I recall correctly. I didn't cheat on you. You cheated in your heart, Nora, Miles said, his voice steady and decided. You lied. You manipulated. You tried to change the rules without my consent, and now you're still lying, even when confronted with proof. As he walked toward the door, panic overwhelmed Nora. You can't just throw away 8 years. You can't just stop loving someone. Miles paused, his hand on the doorknob. That's the thing. I didn't stop loving you. You stopped loving just me. The door closed with terrible finality. That night, through tears and rage, Nora did something she would regret immediately. She posted a vague, self-pitying status on Facebook about people showing their true colors and how sometimes love isn't enough. She tagged Miles in it. Within an hour, she'd lost 20 friends. By morning, Miles had blocked her entirely, and most of their mutual friends had either unfriended her or restricted what she could see. She'd become the villain in her own story. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Nora didn't contest anything. She couldn't bear the thought of dragging it out, of everyone knowing even more of their personal business. Miles was surprisingly generous in the settlement, letting her keep the house. But she could no longer afford it on her own. 3 months later, she had to sell it, moving into a one-bedroom apartment that echoed with emptiness. Meanwhile, through mutual acquaintances she couldn't quite shake, she heard updates about Miles. He'd gotten a promotion. He'd moved permanently to the Florida office. Theo had completely vanished from her life. The last she heard, he'd moved to another state for a job. He never once reached out to see how she was doing after everything fell apart. The person who truly wanted her, she'd destroyed. The person she thought she wanted never wanted her at all. About a year after the divorce, Nora had finally started rebuilding. She'd gotten a new job, was starting to feel like herself again. The company she worked for was big on partners attending events, and she'd managed to dodge questions about her relationship status until the holiday party. That night, as she stood alone by the dessert table, her boss approached with his wife and another couple. Nora, have you met our new regional director? He just transferred from our Florida office. Nora turned with a plastic smile and froze. Miles stood there, his arm around a petite brunette who looked at him with obvious adoration. We've met, Miles said smoothly, no emotion betraying their history. Nice to see you, Nora. The brunette, his new wife Nora would learn, smiled warmly and extended her hand. I'm Ellie. Miles never mentions knowing anyone from the home office. What a small world. Nora mumbled something appropriate, excused herself, and spent the next 20 minutes locked in a bathroom stall, hyperventilating. Miles was now her boss's boss. Miles was happily remarried. Miles looked better than ever while she was still single, still struggling, still stuck. Over the following months, Nora was forced to watch from the periphery as Miles thrived. His new wife was universally adored at company events. They bought a house in the nicest neighborhood. He received another promotion. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Eventually, Nora couldn't take it anymore. She applied for a transfer to the Seattle office, as far away as possible within the company. Miles approved it immediately. His final email simply read, "Request granted. Best wishes for your future endeavors." As Nora packed up her apartment for the second time in 2 years, preparing to move across the country, she found their old wedding album buried in a box she'd never fully unpacked. Flipping through it, she barely recognized the smiling woman in white. She looked so certain, so unaware of how thoroughly she would destroy her own happiness. The truth she still couldn't fully admit, even to herself, was that she'd had everything she needed and threw it away for a fantasy that never existed. Miles had moved on and found genuine happiness with someone who chose only him. Theo had never really wanted her in the first place. And Nora was alone, about to start over in a city where she knew no one, working at the same company where everyone knew her ex-husband was thriving without her. Sometimes at night, she still catches herself wondering, what if she'd never asked that question? What if she'd been satisfied with the good man who loved her? What if she'd recognized the value of what she had before testing its limits? But those questions, like so many others, come too late to matter anymore. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes, you just need to water the grass you already have. Thank you so much for listening to Nora's story here on Mrs. Emma. This is the kind of tale that reminds us all to appreciate what we have before it's gone, and to think carefully about the consequences of our choices before we make them. If this story touched you, resonated with you, or made you think twice about taking your loved ones for granted, please hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and allows me to bring you more real, emotional stories like this one. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Mrs. Emma and turn on those notifications so you never miss a story. I share new tales of love, loss, and life lessons every week. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Share this video with friends who might need to hear it. Sometimes the best lessons come from other people's mistakes. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted more and risked everything? What would you have done differently? Until next time, I'm Emma, reminding you to cherish what you have and think twice before you gamble it all away. Take care, everyone.